Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back into the LFC Transfer Room. Today's stream is going to be a Transfer Central discussing transfer moves for Liverpool Football Club and just the general state of affairs as we are now in day 3 of the January transfer window. But if you believe the rumors out there, we may have done all of our business before the month of January. It may be a rather boring next 27 or so days. But I'm delighted to be alongside James, Kev, and Anthony to discuss all things Liverpool. James, first of all, how are you doing this lovely Tuesday afternoon?
Well, it's a wet one here in the UK, mate. And you say boring, I say painful. 27 days, but yeah, apart from that, I'm all good.
Kev, how yourself?
All good. Daughter's birthday today. Being in town, shopping with her and her 2 mates. Worst thing I could ever do. Worse than last night, I think. But I'll say that now because she's not in the room.
Patience.
How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well. That's a high bar, worse than last night. Man, you really did not enjoy your time. But we'll extend our happy birthday wishes from all of us, obviously. And Anthony, how are you doing as well?
Yeah, same as Kev. Last night aside, I think I'm doing very well. Hopefully, I'm not as pessimistic as everyone else. I hope there's another signing in this window, but yeah, we just got to wait and see.
Yeah, indeed. Well, if you're in the live chat, make sure to get involved with players you want us to talk about, just your thoughts on Liverpool Football Club in general. There's so many nuances to the club right now with, just an unfortunate match yesterday against Brentford. We'll start off with that as Transfer Central, but I don't think you can talk about the transfers without referencing what's happening on the pitch to show the need for that. James, you and I, for the last 6-12 months, go back and forth on how we view the long-term future of the club, the short-term future. I'm interested kind of in your perspective just on this match, how much you think is needed as a result, not of that one match, but how much did you take away from the Brentford results in terms of what needs to happen at the club?
I see. Looking at it through a microcosm of one game is really difficult to do. But what I will say is some things are becoming more apparent in a consistent way, which is mentally the players aren't the same. You look at the Jordan Henderson in the World Cup when he gets away from Liverpool and the Jordan Henderson in the Liverpool team. They're different players. Whether you like him or not, the way he imparts himself on a game was very different in the two situations. You look at players like Harvey Elliott, who has all the talent in the world, but runs around like a headless chicken. He was at left back, pressing. I mean, what do you expect? Now, I don't necessarily think that there's a school of thought, which is you could say Klopp's not doing anything, or is he doing too much and confusing them, and it's not becoming muscle memory? Because we all know in sport, muscle memory is key. Trent Alexander-Arnold playing in the right centre of the box is not where Trent Alexander-Arnold gets assists. And he was the most offensive weapon we've had. Robertson came on and played like Robertson played 2 years ago. He didn't finish last season great. He looked gassed, but he just picked up the ball and he just drove down the wing and tried to make things happen. And suddenly we looked decent. And then he got too involved in other stuff and it all went left. But we got 2 goals with him just picking up the ball and driving at it. So I think for me, where I'm at the moment is there seems to be a lack of belief, leadership, and that mentality that made us think that we could just get something out of a game. Whether it's Salah, Robertson, Henderson, Milner, Van Dijk, one of these leaders, if that's what they are, need to take a page out of Alisson's book and start dominating in their position, because nobody is at this moment in time.
Yeah, it really was a tough watch, as we've all referenced already. Kev, for you, back before I get to you, Kev, wanted to say I didn't have to suffer, getting bullied or talk to other people about it. It may mock my Liverpool fandom, but thoughts are with you. Good to see you as always, Jen, and thank you incredibly as always, Jen. Your support always very appreciated on the channel. Excited to discuss things here. Kev, I'll toss it over to you kind of just on the Brentford match, your takeaways from it, and building on kind of what James hit on with just the state of the club at the moment.
I think at the minute, We're playing with a team that's got no ideas on the pitch. We have a plan A, and if plan A doesn't work, we'll continue with plan A point one, and we'll continue with that all through the game. It's surprising at the level of individuality I see on that pitch and no cohesiveness. There's if Thiago doesn't produce something for us, who is? We have Nunes running in channels and no one's willing to find him. He's running lost causes. Salah is going back to the Salah we saw at the start of the season, which was frustration and being left on the wing when he needs to play a little bit more in between the lines of the 18-yard box, which I think is fundamental. We're playing Elliott in a position that is nowhere near he should be playing, and I feel sorry for him. We have a formation that doesn't work due to an aging squad, and we're in transition. And the only player that's actually had any kind of decent run in the team and deserves it for what he's done is Alisson. You know, he's already made more saves than what he did in the 1920 season. So it shows how far off we are. Adding to the microcosm of one game, we're in a transfer window, and we have a manager pre-match coming out and saying, well, we're not a monopoly club and we're not going to buy any midfielders. It just... It liquefies the actual melting pot even more for me. And it's a shame because we have a great manager who now people are now thinking is the actual problem and one out. It's a lot going on after one game in 2023. And we're nowhere near finding the end cause of it, or what is the root cause. We know as fans what we want to see, but we don't see what's going on training. Is it down to what Gallagher said about, is it down to the fact that Linders has more of a say on the team than what Klopp does? Has he gone too far away from the gegenpressing style of game? And we're seeing that in some of the signings that he signed. Are we seeing that, or are we getting more frustrated and angered just because it's Brentford and it wasn't like a Chelsea or a Man City game, which we could get away with in a certain degree? But none of it comes out of it any good. I feel sorry for the young guys, especially Harvey Elliott. I think he is going to be facing a lot of criticism for his performance yesterday, and it's unheard of. I hate to see the young guys suffering because it's not his fault that he's been put in that position. He's been asked, will you play in that position? And he's not going to turn around and say, no, I'm not. So,
it's mental though, isn't it, Kev?
It is definitely
a central midfielder playing left wing, and you've got
a
right winger in Harvey Elliott, who I think is a right winger, playing right central midfielder.
Exactly. It doesn't work. But we've said early on, I noticed it and highlighted it earlier on in the season that he wasn't the answer. We have a perfect player there in Besic. Why didn't he start yesterday? Why aren't we say, he's too young. I get that, but we also have Elliott there as well, and I feel as though I'm ranting a bit now, so I'm going to hold off a bit. But I think Besic should have started yesterday. I think, or even Keita for me.
A lot of interesting points from Kev there. I'll let Anthony jump in on the discussion of the Brentford match and kind of just your overall thoughts on where Liverpool's at the moment.
To be fair, I think it's already been summed up. This is the first time in years, man, where I've genuinely, I think this is the sort of lowest point where the club's got a couple of seasons ago, obviously we had that defensive crisis, so there's a sort of explanation as to why we're so bad. But no, it's not just one problem. There's a lot of things, and I think, like Kev pointed out as well, he said people are turning on Klopp, and I feel like I'm one of them, and I don't want to be in that position, but it's just the same old match we're watching throughout the entire season. And I think I said it against Napoli. It was like watching the same match against Crystal Palace at Anfield when we drew 1-1. Same against Fulham, and it's because there's no tactics. What are we trying to achieve here? When Salah, Trent, and Harvey Elliott are doing those little triangle passes, what are we trying to achieve from that? I'm convinced we've not scored a single goal from one of those movements all season. It's just been trying to cross it into the box, and hopefully Nunes or someone else can get their head to it. Aside from the Bournemouth match and Man City, I can't think of one good performance from us all season. And matches like this, it leaves you in a bad way. But and like you're saying, Elliot shouldn't be thrown into the deep end, like especially not in his natural position as well. I thought Keita's there, start him. Thiago and Keita worked well together in that second half, and I thought, as much as people probably don't want to admit it, I thought we played really well in that second half. But it's just the lack of sort of attacking threat. There was no sort of movement within the front three. It was just too narrow. And even with finishing chances, some of the players weren't taking their shots. Trent got into a good position to shoot, Salah as well, and I don't know, even Keita had a decent opportunity to shoot and decided to pass it as well. So I think there's a lot of problems at the moment. You can't really pinpoint one, but it's just a mess. And Klopp, like we were saying as well, it doesn't really help himself coming out before the match saying we don't need a midfielder, and we've stretched our budget to sign Cody Gakpo. I'm sorry, but we shouldn't stretch our budget. 40 million is not a stretch, right, for a big club. Secondly, why are we signing a forward ahead of a midfielder when we clearly need a midfielder this season? Like, I don't know. It's just a huge mess at the moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned just the wide scope of problems. It's tough to kind of, maybe your issue is the lack of movement from the forwards and the amount of forward runs you're making. But then you also have a lack of security in the midfield. So you almost, how do you fix those two at the same time? It's not easy. And then you have half a dozen other issues. Virgil van Dijk coming off with what looked to, at least on the US broadcast, said it was a slight thigh injury. We don't know how much or how serious that's going to be. He wasn't impervious in that match, but it's hard to be in this system unless your name's Allison, because he was just, he's been playing unbelievably this year, obviously, to this point. But a lot of good points overall. James, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, I think the real, where it comes down to is, and we all know it because we've all talked about it, it's that midfield, but that transition from passing around the back four to transition into midfield, someone to drive forward with the ball, to allow the forwards to make runs, to find space, to give it to Thiago, to put someone through, isn't happening. No one's driving the ball forward from defence through to midfield. We're relying on Joel Matip to do it. Mm-hmm. And as hilarious as it is to watch Joel Matip, and he's great, there's no one else. And if you've got one outlet, it happened to Arsenal years ago, it happened to England when it was Ashley Cole. If you've got one outlet, they'll shut you down. And that's what's happening. We've been shut down.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a simple thing to just get good dribblers in the midfield, but you need players who can carry the ball. That's how you beat low blocks. You carry the ball at the back line, make them step to you, just shake up their system. But the issue was, I mean, Anthony, you pointed it out, I hated those triangles that we were forming on the right side. On paper, you have three really highly technical players. They should be able to do something, but it felt like they were just like doing the Anthony skill where he like just kind of does the spin, like the spin. They were just doing that as a group. They were kind of just spinning around, Elliot at right back, now Elliot at right wing. Now he's in the center of the midfield. It was directionless. But the start of the second half against Brentford, we had some good moments. And that came down in large part due to some good movement from, just driving into the box. Look at the goal that they scored that counted. That was Ox driving into the box for a cross. I can't tell you how often I see that happen when a cross is floated into the box, how often the forwards are just static versus they're attacking the ball. Ox and Nunes both attacked it. It was a nice in-swinger from Trent, and that was the goal. It was just a tiny bit of difference, but that was such a few and far between moment. So the Brentford match, obviously a very tough way to start the new year. For Liverpool, dropping the 3 points there. Brentford now into 7th, Liverpool in 6th. They're going to see what happens in today and tomorrow's match to see what the top 4 complexion looks like. So I think kind of I want to hit on this portion just for a moment. Do we think that Klopp coming out before the match and saying, he was mad that we had just signed Cody Gakpo and we're talking about now who's next? Is his comments about how we're not a monopoly club, we're stretching ourselves, is that him listening to FSG, or is that him adopting the stance that he does not want a midfielder, James? I'll go to you first for this, James. Do you think Klopp would like to sign a midfielder, but doesn't have the money for it, or is he comfortable with his options and wants to make the best of what he has?
Klopp would want a midfielder because Klopp, before Arthur came in, said he needed a midfielder. Now, what we've got to kind of accept to a degree is we don't have a clue what this club's up to. We don't know what we're doing. Even 3 months after everyone was like, there's no buyout for Arthur. And now in January, there's a £38 million buyout on Arthur. and we were confirming that there was no buyout, there's no buyout, all David Ornstein and everyone, there's no buyout, and suddenly there's a £38 million buyout that we're not going to take the exercise on. So whilst Klopp will say one thing, he will have to say, he doesn't have to say it, but he's not going to turn around and say, you guys are not good enough publicly in the media. No leadership has ever been successful through humiliation and insult. Look at what happened to Jose Mourinho when he started going after the players. The only time I've seen it work is Antonio Conte, and that was more he threatened to leave himself. Maybe Klopp could try a tactic like that. Maybe I'm not right for this club. Maybe this, maybe my time's come, and then suddenly watch the players rally around if they want him. But we definitely want a midfielder, because we wanted a midfielder before, because Klopp said he wanted a midfielder before. It's just whether or not we can get the hands on the one that we want, or whether we're being held to ransom by the 4 or 5 clubs that we're trying to negotiate with.
Yeah, it really is tough. I don't know if a journalist has kind of almost sat there and pointed his comments at him and said, you said you were wrong. We needed to sign a midfielder. You said pointedly, you were right, I was wrong. Then you signed Arthur Melo. He played 13 minutes. That 13 minutes did not get rid of that need. Unless it did. You just got to ask him, like, Jurgen, what changed? And if nothing changed, you still need a midfielder, but you stretched yourself to sign Cody Gakpo. Why did you sign Cody Gakpo? So I do want to segue this actually into something, a specific discussion on a transfer. And it's Roberto Firmino. There were rumors coming out. It was, I forget what journalist it was, but linking him to Al Nassr to go link up with Cristiano Ronaldo. But more so, rather than if it's just that one move, Roberto Firmino's short-term and long-term future. Anthony, I'll swing this over to you first. Firmino, with that link to go to Al Nassr, I don't know if it was at the end of the season or right now, what do you see for him in terms of his long-term future? Because the relation I have with Cody Gakpo is, what if Gakpo was being brought in now with the thought process that Firmino's also leaving right now?
I mean, that's how we've always been operating now. It's like we brought Nunes in, had to get rid of Mane, brought in Carvalho, had to get rid of, what's his name, Minamino and Origi. So it's always been like that. But I don't really think there's much relation to Gakpo and Firmino. I think that was more of a look at us now. We've got no left wing until, mid-February. And there's a chance Jota and Diaz might both miss that Real Madrid match, which obviously can't really afford to lose that. And sorry, I got notification. But yeah, I don't, as much as I love Firmino, I just don't think he's got a long-term future, just because there's more. I think we've got, how many forwards we've got now? 6. So I think there's 5 options better than him, and that's not to say he's not good enough, but he's not going to get any game time, and he might as well just leave. But I think at this moment in time, if we sell him in January, I think that's a bad decision, just because obviously we've already got our injury issues, and is he our Premier League top scorer this season? So I think it'll just be silly. But end of the season, then I'll be happy for him to move on, because we've got good enough backups anyway.
Anthony, what if it gives us the ability to register another international player?
If it gives us the money to fund a midfielder, then
not fund, just register, because we might be registered out.
Yeah, because that's the issue right now. Is we have maxed out, I think, our non-homegrown spots with the signing of Gakpo, and we can't. I don't think, unless someone moves on like a Naby Keita or Roberto Firmino, who's filling one of those spots, I think one of them's gonna have to move on. That, I think, that's where my head's at least me personally. I don't know where you're at, Anthony.
I'm not too clued upon it, to be honest. So yeah.
But if Firmino had to go to bring in a midfielder, would you do it?
100%. He's not offering that much to the point where I think he's going to win us a trophy. But a midfielder is generally the difference between us getting top 4 and getting a Conference League spot this season.
Kev, I'll go to you. Roberto Firmino, what's the best decision to be making with him for short-term, long-term future?
Al Nassr, 200 mil. No. Like, being realistic, I'll be honest. When you've got a player, and we've been heavy reliant on Bobby Firmino at the start of the season, because without his goals, where would we have been? So, in all seriousness, I know we've gone, well, where's this Gakpo come from? But as a transfer in. I see it as a logical way of moving forward, and it's a right move at this right time, especially with the injuries that we've got, and it'll be an ideal opportunity now to let the likes of Bobby go, because what Gakpo gives you is a player who can play all across the forward line, and it gives you more of an enticing forward line with a Gakpo, a Nunes, and a Salah playing up front, or with Gakpo just playing behind. Someone with a bit of pace, even in a 2 alongside Nunes, and with Salah just behind, it will be ideal. I'd only keep Bobby if it meant him bringing on the likes of Carvalho, which I said at the start of the season would be beneficial for us. But I'll be honest, we're in a time where I think we're over. We've got plenty of options in that forward line, and if we can get any kind of money back for Bobby, now that's when I would do it. So,
yeah, that would make sense. James, you kind of hit on it.
I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, and James, you kind of hinted at it when Anthony was talking, just the Firmino out for a midfielder, just in terms of a squad space. Even if we get £6 for him, it's not necessarily a funding mission. Where do you stand on that? Are you making that move out for a move in?
It's £6 and £130 a week salary, isn't it? That you're removing. So I genuinely think Gakpo is Firmino's replacement. I think Nunes will function on the left like Mane did, because we've seen when Nunes gets in that right-hand channel and he's trying to fire from where Salah's standing, he can't hit the far post. He corner flag all the time, whereas from the left, very good. So I think Gakpo might play in the centre, a little bit more two-footed. So if Firmino out to get a central midfielder in, that would seem logical. Al Nassr are trying to make a reputation, and if they want to be the new retirement home for the formerly gifted, no problem. Give us a bit of cash, send him on his way.
I think I would love to dig into just the squad numbers, because I had a good sense of it at the beginning of the season. But right now, I think we are maxed out to the spot where we would have to see the most likely two to go would be Firmino or Keita, guys who have 6 months left on their deal, and they're also taking one of those non-homegrown spots. I'm also on the Roberto Firmino, if it can get us a player. If he just goes and we don't sign a player, that just seems pointless. Like, it just, like, why would you just handicap yourself further for no additional gain? I don't think that there's a scenario that would realistically happen this window. But I can't see a future for Firmino beyond the summer of 2023. I don't think a new deal makes sense. I think, yeah, he could produce for us. He could. But we need to move past just kind of squeezing the little last bits out of the toothpaste and just buy a new thing of toothpaste, and then just make it easier for you to try and utilize that, because he does, I think, have another few years of good production in him. Not at a, starting week in, week out, but just as a rotation guy, as a leadership guy, as a guy who's got a lot of experience. He'd be good to have around the club, but I just don't think we can fill that spot with him. We could use, I'll segue it here now into another guy, and that might be a Matheus Nunes, 24-year-old Portuguese midfielder. Stop me if you heard this before, linked to Liverpool. He was linked back in the summer window. We decided not to pull the trigger on him. He went to the Premier League to Wolves, who have struggled mightily this year. He's linked now to go to Liverpool again. He's the face on the thumbnail. There'd be an element of frustration for me if we signed Nunes, because we almost wasted this year and we spent extra money for no apparent reason. Kev, I'll toss it to you first. I haven't seen a ton of Nunes' performances in the Premier League since we decided not to sign him. But Wolves haven't lit the Premier League alight, so it's been tough for him to do the same. Does Matheus Nunes move you at all? Do you have any thoughts towards that potential move in the midfield?
Prior to the season starting and seeing his touch map, I was all over him. I watched him against Man United over the weekend. He didn't do a lot for me. He didn't do anything for me. But the problem I've got with this, Jack, is, and I don't know if anyone else agrees, but this would be ridiculous, but it'd be more up FSG's route of signing someone. We've given you a midfielder. oh yeah, by the way, we can't sign him in January and he can't play for Liverpool, but you'll have him at the end of the season. There you go. That doesn't work for me. That adds more frustration, because I'd sooner pay that money now for someone who can come in now, rather than being brought and bringing someone in who hasn't really done anything at Wolverhampton. He hasn't created much. He hasn't done what I was expecting to see. Now, whether I'm expecting a Benfica kind of style player to turn up and start doing what Diaz has done, who came from Porto, and it kind of says something about the Portuguese league at the minute, that they've got some quality players there at certain ridiculous prices. Obviously, one that is well out of our reach at the minute, and that being Enzo Fernandez. But for me, I'd be more frustrated as a fan if we do something like that for Nunes and bring him in at the end of the game. I want someone now, not someone in 6 months' time. We need to bring someone in and find an answer to the weakness we've got. And if that means paying 40 million up front for someone, I'd sooner be doing that now than bringing someone in at the end of the season when we could be languishing out of the European places.
Anthony, for you, you live in the Wolverhampton region. I know you have some ties there, but kind of, do you have any extra insight on Nunes? Because I'll hit my thoughts on it afterwards. But just for you, Matheus Nunes, you for this, against this? Because it wouldn't be this window; it would be the summer, as Kev mentioned.
I'm against it, because literally Kev's reasoning that there's no point signing someone in the summer when we need them now. Like, imagine we finish the season 5th place, and then there you go. There's Matheus Nunes. Like, we needed one to help us get to Champions League football. So he's not going to be that midfield. I think. So I'll keep agreeing with Kev this stream, but yeah. Before the season started, I would have took him, but now it's just a bit. I think he may have been injured a couple of times as well, which doesn't obviously help our case. Yeah, to be fair, it fit right in with our midfield, but I just think there's better options out there for 40 million, and even for like 20 to 30 million, surely there's some decent options out there. Like Manu Kone's name's been thrown about. I know we're going to discuss him later, but I'll take him. But with Liverpool, it's always be next summer FC, or we'll leave it to the very last second, like we did with Artur, and it's just a mess. I just don't understand why we only scout like 1 or 2 players at a time, and there's been so many reports about Bellingham's the #1 target and he's going to be our main focus, and if we don't get him, then we'll have to think about our options. Like, such a ridiculous sort of transfer policy, like for a big club as well, and that we're not even guaranteed to get Bellingham anyway. And I personally don't think we're going to get him anymore, because I can't see him joining. Firstly, because of the fee, and secondly, because I just don't see us getting Champions League football unless we sign a midfielder, and that's not looking like it's going to happen.
It's I don't know what the paradox you would call it as, but you need Champions League football to sign Jude Bellingham, but you can't get Champions League football without Jude Bellingham or a midfielder, and you wouldn't sign a midfielder because you want to sign Jude Bellingham. So it's like, it feels like we're building ourselves for almost no scenario in which we can win. Like, it's almost a lose-lose, James, for you on Matheus.
3 Champions League finals in 5 years.
I know. I'm not saying it's like we're doomed.
The recency bias on this.
We're not doomed, but
it's so much doom. What are we? 3rd of January. We've lost to Brentford. It's doomsday. No one's ever going to want to sign for us. But it's 3 Champions League finals in 5 years. That is what you say to a player. Yes, all right, it'd be better if we were in the Champions League. I'm not going to deny it. And yes, the competition's high. Newcastle are doing well. Arsenal are doing well. Chelsea are spending more money, and they're securing that 8th position at this moment in time. United look all right, but they're relying on Rashford, and we all know he's good for about 3 months before he suddenly gets involved in other political matters. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're still an incredibly attractive club who's done tremendous things and has the capability to do tremendous things. We just need to fix a really obvious error.
I'm going to spin it on its head for you real quick, James. The pitch, I 100% agree, is not more or less this exact same if there's no Champions League football. We're still very attractive, even if it's 1 year without the Champions League football. But the money. You're telling me you can't see the headline? You can't see the headline of, oh, without Champions League football, FSG finds it difficult to see the outlay of Jude Bellingham. You can't tell me you don't see that headline. Should we finish 5th or lower?
I don't think the transfer fee is particularly a problem because you could sign him on such a long-term contract. You could financially, he'd pay for himself every year. The problem is we wouldn't pay his wages.
Yeah.
When we talk about financing, it's what Real Madrid will offer in wages and what Man City would offer in wages to ensure we don't get him would outweigh anything we would offer in wages because it'd have to be what Salah's on.
Yeah.
We could afford the transfer fee because he would pay for himself every year with shirt sales and everything like that, but there is not a chance we could afford his wages unless we've got someone lined up to buy the club that wants to change the model, or unless FSG are going to change the model. Now they've got their Las Vegas basketball team.
Yeah. We'll head on Jude Bellingham in a minute, just a second. For Matheus Nunes, thumbs up, thumbs down real quick for you, James, there. Just kind of wrap that up. Yeah. I'll join you. I think I'll make a consensus thumbs down because to me, if we made a move, we said we have a pre-agreement for Matheus Nunes in the summer, I would say, what the hell are we doing? Because this just indicates that we could have signed him 6 months ago, and he could have been a difference maker for us in these last 6 months. And I haven't seen much great work from him at Wolves. So what has he done to warrant a higher transfer fee and a move 6 months later? It's just it reeks of incompetence and just inability to see problems before they really crop their head up to be as bad as they are now. So yeah, I think just to kind of sorry about that, to cap off the Nunes discussion, the Matheus Nunes discussion, I think it's a no for Liverpool. On Jude Bellingham, though, he's a guy that is always floated out there. But I mean, and I know Jen in the comments is Jude Bellingham just all in. But for me, if it's 130 million pounds, 150 million pounds, James, pitch to me why that is better than 3 players in the midfield. Even if it's Matheus Nunes, Manu Kone, and then maybe a Sofiane Amrabat, which would be cheaper than I think the 130 million pound figure for Jude Bellingham. Why is Bellingham a better decision for the club than 3 guys who are worse than him, but they're 3 guys compared to 1 guy?
So the 3 guys that are worse than him at 19 years old.
Yeah.
There are 3 guys that are less valuable to the club as an asset generally and would hold their value less. We are talking about the top 1% of world football. We're talking about Champions Leagues. We're talking about World Club Champions. We're talking about Premier Leagues. Are those 3 players really, unless we were in the absolute crap as we are now, your dream signings? People would, if this was the start of, let's say we had signed a midfielder in the last 4.5 years, which we haven't. But let's say, for example, why are we talking about fillers? We're talking about fillers now because we need a filler. But really, we should be talking about Enzo Fernandez. We should be talking about Declan Rice. We should be talking about Jude Bellingham. We should be talking about the top 1% of the top 1%. Because we are Liverpool Football Club and we are trying to win major honours. So that's why one Jude Bellingham is worth all those 3.
I want to segue now into one of those guys specific. That was a very good argument by you there, James, on the Jude Bellingham train there. It's very interesting to see what happens in that department. But Manu Kone, a guy that Anthony, you floated a little bit earlier, we've seen in the comments once or twice in the stream. The actual first name, Quadio. Don't know if that's how you pronounce it. We're calling him Manu. We're on a nickname basis with him already. There were rumors that from whenever Fabrizio Romano tweets Liverpool, with a signing, I will take that as, it's truth. It's going to happen just because I need something to cling to. But he said many top clubs are following French big talent Manu Kone. Been told summer is move likely planned for the player, agents, and Gladbach, FC Bayern, Newcastle, PSG, and also Liverpool. Where he also put in parentheses, Bellingham remains number 1 priority for Liverpool, are well informed of the situation. Kev, it's not a player I'm particularly familiar with. He's been growing in stature. We were linked to him a little bit in the summer. Decided not to pull the trigger, obviously. He'd be a much cheaper option. I don't know what the exact number that Mönchengladbach would want. But the important word, I think, in that sentence, in that tweet from Fabrizio Romano to me is summer. For you, Kev, is it a non-starter if it can't be happening in this window?
I would be looking at enticing his club with a certain Naby Keita and trying to persuade them in a way of, we'll give you him and we'll give you 20 million or whatever, and we bring someone in. We need someone in now. I don't want to hear about summer. I want someone in now. If it's Bellingham and it's a pre-contract, happy days. That's the only one I'll be all in for summer. I'll go, right, sound, happy days. I don't think we need Champions League football to get Bellingham. I think he's mature enough and speaks the way he speaks. I know he's eloquent, and I think he's very, very much on his feet are on the floor, and his family are a lovely family, and will be willing to go to a Klopp. But if you're going back to Kone, I want someone in now. I don't want someone coming in the summer. We've talked about Nunes. We can do that for everyone who's mentioned as a summer I don't care if we bring 8 in the summer. The problem is we've left ourselves in a predicament now where we have assets at the club that have no actual investment that we can entice people to buy. We've got people coming to the end of the contracts, and why is that? Because we've been loyal. And because we've been loyal, we've got FSG who have now turned around and said, look, we're not going to prize those assets that you are loyal about and give them a contract, because we've got no kind of way of trying to persuade people to buy people. We can offer Ox as much as we want, but he can leave at the end of the season and sign a pre-season agreement. We have a player we bought for 50 million, and that asset has been run down to 0. It's bad. We're in a bad situation going into a January transfer window when we need someone to come in and we need numbers, and that's the problem we've got. We need summer for young players. No, if you can come in now, entice them, try and sell someone, try and persuade one of the fringe players to go there on loan. Try and sort something out. We need someone in now, not summer. I don't know if you agree, Jack.
I do agree. It's tough to me to rationalize. It's tough to me to understand the strategy. If Bellingham is the number one priority, and then we're going to go for a Nunes and a Kone when they aren't going to be available until the exact same time. Because if we decide summer is a massive midfield overhaul and maybe sign all 3 of those guys, Matheus Nunes, Jude Bellingham, and Manu Kone, then there's a discussion there, because you're waiting 6 months to get a good group, the guy you really want, and then 2 other guys. I don't know. And you mentioned Naby Keita going out. To me, that's also tough to rationalize, because Naby Keita can also produce this year. Is Kone going to push the needle that much more than Keita? I'm not sure he even would be. Anthony, for you, Manu Kone, thoughts kind of on that potential transfer, what maybe could be going in that department?
I mean, I can't really say I'm a Borussia Mönchengladbach expert, but from what I've seen of him, it looks good defensively and in terms of keeping possession. But the only thing I disagree with in terms of giving away Keita now, if Thiago were to get injured, which I think is bound to happen at some point between now and the end of the season, I do not want to be seeing a midfield of Henderson, Fabinho, and Harvey Elliott or James Milner. I'd rather see Keita there. Yeah, him as well, to be honest. But we saw the difference, like I already pointed out, in the second half when Keita came on. But if he does run out his contract, then we have to sign someone else. But that should already be prepared for, and I think Kone is probably the option. Or we've already discussed Nunes. We can't really bring him in now, or Moises Caicedo. But they have to act, because it doesn't make sense. Like we're letting these players like Chamberlain, Keita, Curtis Jones, not Jones, sorry, Firmino. These are players you could sell for decent value, and they're all out of contract. So I don't know what their plan is to do, because our policy is to sell to buy. So who be planning on selling in the summer to afford all the other options except for Bellingham? It doesn't quite make sense. But I'm on the Manu Kone train, just because I think he solidifies our midfield, and he's also solid squad player. Whenever Keita's injured or Thiago's injured, he'll fill in for them, and I don't think we're losing too much quality. Whereas with Elliott, you already see that defensively he's not quite there. But that's just we've already said, that's not his natural position.
It is a tough one to just balance the squad, figure out how he's going to fit in. James, toss it over to you on Kone.
I was bringing him up on FB Ref. Have a bit of a look because that's probably, his last 365 day stats is probably more than I've seen when I've watched him at Gladbach. And there's a couple of things we've talked about already that he's really high in statistically, which just means it makes sense. He's in the top 1% of dribbles completed and the top 2% of dribbles attempted. So someone to drive forward with the ball, that's exactly what we need. We need someone to just run at their defence. So he fits. Tackles in the defensive third, top 9%. Tackles overall, top 20% in midfielders in world football. Right, so he'll win a tackle. He will win a tackle and he will drive at their defence. Well, that pretty much summarises exactly what we need to solve the problem we've got at this moment in time. Because when Robertson did it, we scored 2 goals. One was offside, but we scored 2 goals. So if you've got someone in midfield doing it, that seems like a solution to me. And then you've got someone like Thiago who can, when they all start to crowd around him, have some space to make some decisions. This seems like it's an eminently possible transfer and a player who would be able to do everything Henderson's meant to do, but is in the top percentile for it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a fan as well, James. I think that he adds a bit more of a industry to the midfield. And I do admit it's a mistake, James. I was in the camp. Our midfield needs to be a bit more creative. We need to get some goals from the midfield. Our midfield can't just be a bunch of workhorses. The grass is not always greener. I regret being on that hill because, God, would I take a Jorginho Wijnaldum, 2018 to 2020, and Jordan Henderson, just give him his legs back. I know he's not the most creative force, and I get mad at him for that sometimes, but you could never discredit him for running his ass off every game. He was going to cover every blade of grass. But against Brentford and in some of the matches that we've struggled in, it's been a lack of energy. It's been being overrun in the midfield. And when they bypass the forward press, the midfield is not winning the ball back. And if you're a forward, tell me if you're Mohamed Salah, does not discourage you from pressing. Because if you don't work your absolute hardest to win it back, that ball is getting into your defensive third and into the box for Alisson have to make a save, because it's just tough, the knock-on effect that has, a lack of protection for the midfield, the lack of protection for the back line, a lack of support for the forwards. Kev, I'll toss over to you.
But Jack, is that down to, if you look at the lack of investment in the midfield area, is that us coming away and going to a technical side of a player and bringing the likes of a Thiago in and an Elliott and playing them in it and a Carvalho, who are not necessarily a gegenpressing kind of style of player, and we've tried to go away from that in a certain point. I think Nunes is similar to what Aquilani was to Rafa Benitez in the fact we had 60 million to go and spare. Let's go and bring him in. We haven't changed our style of play or wanted to change our style of play to what he's good at. We've let him to go out and be the actual reason why social media goes on a big. If you want clickbait, just type something about Darwin Nunes, because that's what happens. We haven't found a solution to that, and that's the problem you've got with us at the minute, is that there's no plan B. And it goes back to what I said. We haven't found a formula or a way of playing a technical style of game that makes us and allows us to bring in these players and adopt that. We restrict ourselves to a 4-3-3, but don't have the players that can actually utilize in a 4-3-3. And we rely on the aging midfielders that you've mentioned, and one that we haven't even replaced since he left us. That's the reason why we're in a predicament that we are, because we've tried to do it on the cheap. We've tried to do what a landlord does when he's got renters in. You got a problem with your windows? Yeah, we won't get you double glazing. What I'll do is I'll get plastic double glazing for you, and I'll do it cheaper, and then it runs up the cost. And now we're in a predicament. Now it's going to cost us 200 to 300 million to bring someone in. That's the problem we've got. We need to change, and that's why I think Linda's, and I agree with what Gallagher said last night, I think that's the reason why we are in this predicament. Klopp has gone away from that because he's listened to too many people, possibly around him, who have more of a say and are willing to bring these players in, but we haven't got a kind of formation, and he's reluctant to change that. Do you know what I mean? We've got the players there. We've been trying to work out what would be the best formation. We've got to think of one with the players we've got now if we don't bring anyone in. So it's all very well we can talk about players that we want to bring in. If we don't bring anyone in, we need to find a solution with what we've got. And that's the problem we've got at the minute. Sorry, I just keep it. Do you know what? I feel as though I'm ranting, and if I do, please just stop me.
No, you're good, Kev. I love the points you're making. Real quick to jump in for you, James. I'm just going to wrap up the Manu Kone point, and then we'll kind of segue a bit more broad stuff. But he'd be a great, fresh bit of impetus and legs. Nice signing. But if it can't happen until the summer, it's tough to really rationalize that. James, I'll let you jump in now.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to make it happen now. I mean, what we're talking about, and I agree with many of what Kev said about it, but you've got Thiago's a creative player on the left-hand side, and then you've got a workhorse player in Robertson who's a left back and just works up and down. Then you used to have a creative workhorse in Mane. On the right-hand side, you have Trent, who is free roll, Salah, free roll. What you can't have is Harvey Elliott, free roll.
Nope.
It's just open. It's just an open track, isn't it? So you need a disciplined person who can drive forward with the ball and let the free players play.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Kone is. He's 21. You get him in, get Milner out, get Henderson playing 20 minutes a week, just working with him so that he knows positionally when to press, how to press, and what to do. And you sorted, and then you've got your creativity both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that people can just get straight behind our back four, straight behind, because we have 3 free role players playing on one side, that's the problem. And once we solve that and we start running at teams as opposed to just trying these long diagonal balls to get in behind them because they're waiting for it, we will start to have more success. But it's only 6 months ago we were in for all the marbles. Let's not just, everyone's not crap, but something is fundamentally wrong with this new approach we've implemented this year. Yeah.
And to build off that, James, that's what infuriates me the most is that, yes, we could use a revolution in the team, 5, 6 players going out, 5, 6 players coming in. That would help. But what club would not benefit from that, to be honest? I mean, that's just improving your team and just making it fresh, making it new. We literally need 1 player. And then we are back to, of our squad, Fabinho at defensive mid is one of the best in the world if he has good support alongside him. He hasn't had good support alongside him. He's regressed. He still is a great option. Thiago, on his day, he could be the best central midfielder in the world. He hasn't been on his day a ton recently, but he still has. And we saw was the Villa match he was brilliant in. He's got his moments where he's really been able to take over matches. A great group of forwards. 5 forwards, if you remove Firmino from that discussion, is brilliant. And then you've got youngsters in Ben Doak and Fabio Carvalho who can also toss their name in the hat. That's just good unit there. Center backs are great. Right back and left back depth is perfect. And you have, in my opinion, the best goalie in the world. You literally just need 1 right central midfielder that is reliable, that can just help shore up the defensive issues in that midfield. And you could be a contender for the Champions League. You could be damn near favorite for the Champions League, James, because this is still a brilliant team of brilliant players. But they just have let the one, that right center mid spot, Harvey Elliott, is young, he's developing, he's learning. There's a good player in there. I don't know if it's as a right central midfielder. I don't know if it's there. I don't know if he's a right winger. I don't know his best position. It's weird, and I just don't know if the best positions for him or Fabio Carvalho exist in the team that we play. I don't know if they exist in the formation that we play. If it's a 4-3-3, Carvalho wants to be a 10 in a 4-2-3-1, and maybe even Harvey Elliott would appreciate being a right winger in that kind of formation where he doesn't have to play as a forward. He can be a bit more of a creative option because he's a great creator, but he's not a good presser. And when you have Thiago and Elliott in a midfield, Thiago's not a bad presser. He's a great tackler. You've seen it in the last few matches. But you just push him too hard in that aspect of the game. Thiago should be, your luxury, just a part of the team. I go to Indiana University. We're one of the best college men's soccer programs in history. And the guy who founded the program, this guy's name is Jerry Yeagley. He had a saying. He said, you have piano movers and piano players. And our issue was, as you mentioned, James, on the right side, it's a lot of good piano players, but who's going to move the piano up and down the pitch? It's not. That's been the issue.
I wondered where you were going, but that kind of made sense.
Look at that. I found it in the end. Let's wrap it up on. I mean, not like a ton of fresh news on Moises Caicedo, but I think we can kind of just talk about how much it'd be nice to have him. James, for you, is Caicedo the best option out there, or is there another guy that you think could be a better this window signing?
Caicedo is the best option of defensive midfielders available in the market because we know he can do it in the Premier League and we know he can do it at the level of intensity we need because we've seen it constantly. So for me, he's the best option. Some of the others statistically look good, but we know Caicedo would be a great signing.
How much would you be willing to pay for him? Really? So you have to obviously balance FSGs. Can they rationalize that? What's your upward limit on Caicedo signing?
Probably 50.
50.
Probably because unfortunately, you look at it with players like Salah and stuff like that. They don't get the same branding and marketing. You know, there's a big thing against African players not getting the same sort of revenue generation opportunities. You get someone like Jude or Enzo Fernandez who's just won a World Cup, and you know you've got sponsors streaming through the door. I think it's is he going to pay for himself in shirt sales? And that's a horrible thing to say, but I think that's the truth of it.
Yeah, it is definitely a factor. I'm also laughing at this comment from Ash. Elliot plays the recorder. The kid ain't no piano player. Regardless of what you think about Harvey Elliott, I enjoyed that comment. I think today probably closer to the recorder than the piano player, especially in comparison to Trent and Salah. But he's put in a tough spot. But like Moises Caicedo, I don't know if he would play like that right central midfield spot, but he would almost allow you to play. I mean, you put him in that midfield with Fabinho and Thiago as probably your best choice midfield. That shores up your defensive issues. You know, he's going to press. He's going to win duels. He's going to support, you know, Trent and Salah in a way that no other Liverpool midfielder can do right now. So I think for me, it's just a case of how much you're willing to spend on Caicedo, not is he a good fit or not. Kev, I'll go to you. How much are you thinking for Caicedo? Would you be willing to spring for him, knowing that there are other targets that Liverpool want to sign? But for Caicedo, what are you looking to spend?
Roughly the same as what James is, but I've just looked and he's just had an assist for Brighton, who are now 1-0 up against Everton.
60
so
million.
That is
60
now
million.
So I'll be honest, Brighton are going to play hardball with them, and why not? You know what I mean? He's probably one of their best assets, along with McAllister as well, and they could ask for anything for them. I'd be willing to pay tops of 60 with an additional 10 in add-ons based on us winning a Super Cup and a club championship and Bellingham signing, you know what I mean? Something along those lines, and see if that kind of persuades them. But I'd love us to sign him. I would. I think he's looked great. I've you know, the first game against United, I thought he played absolutely superb, and I was like, wow, who's this kid? And I've watched him since, and he's grown as a talent, and he's only going to get better. Has he reached his ceiling? I don't think he has. I think he's got a long way to go. Get him in, because it would shut the actual fan base up. If we sign Moises Caicedo, you can play in an 8, you can play him in a 6 if you need to. If Fabinho gets injured, but what an acquisition! What a player who can play certain parts in that midfield. It's what we need. Bring him in.
I'm just watching the goal that Brighton just scored, and basically Caicedo sitting in the right center midfield spot, looks out to his left, sprays a pass to Cora Mitoma. Don't know if I'm butchering his name. Puts it to him kind of like where the right back is, so it's not like it was the most brilliant assist that set him up, because Mitoma then had to beat 2 players to score the goal, but he played a pass that got an assist. Man, that the bar is in hell. The bar is in hell. We need a signing like him. He would be a real statement. But you made a good point, Kev. Brighton can play hardball, and Jack Harvey makes a good comment as well. Nobody who's in the world of football is disillusioned that Liverpool need a midfielder desperately. So especially for Brighton, you're saying, why are we selling him in the middle of a season that we're doing quite well in? One of our key players, a guy that you clearly want very badly, you got to spend 70 million pounds on him. And so, Anthony, if it's Brighton playing hardball at 70 million pounds, can you see Liverpool, or would you, if you were in the decision-making spot, be coughing up that kind of money for a guy who, in devil's advocate spot, only played about 25 matches in the Premier League in his life? Is he worth that kind of money?
it's impossible to tell, really. I think in the long term, it'll definitely be worth it, just because he's not going to be like a stopgap signing. He's going to be starting regularly for us. Even if you do sign Jude Bellingham, then you can rotate between him, Thiago. I mean, Thiago's aging. Is it? Not saying he's losing his quality, but obviously in a couple of years he's not going to be performing at the same level. So he's going to be starting regularly alongside Bellingham or whoever else we've got in midfield. And for Brighton, he's looked insane. That Man United match, I was watching it. I kept hearing his name pop up. I remember playing FIFA a few years ago. I had this guy called Caicedo. I thought, oh, maybe that's him. But it's a completely different person. A bit off topic there, but he was just insane, man. I kept hearing his name every single moment of the match, and it's exactly what we need. Like you're pointing out, James is pointing out with Manu Kone, he could do the defensive work, and also going forward, he offers that sort of extra drive or push, and that's Caicedo as well. And the difference is he's actually prem proven, and like the comment was saying though, we're gonna have to pay that extra bit of money just because everyone knows we're so desperate for a midfielder now. And you think, what other options are there for maybe less than 40 million? You generally can't really pick out any sort of top quality ones. And like you're pointing out as well, with European players, they're always going to have that extra value as well. Like Enzo Fernandez for 130 million is a joke. Like I rate him, so highly, but I'm not. I'd say no to 130 million. I'll be baffed before even to pay that. But yeah, I think Caicedo, I would personally pay it, but Liverpool got no chance of paying it if like I said, all these reports coming out about Bellingham, he's our number one target. I can't see us spending 70 on someone else.
Yeah, really is tough to rationalize that as well. We can kind of wrap up the stream with some more broad discussions on Liverpool transfers. James, like we have a comment here. I want to pull it up. If we had invested the money we got for winning the Champions League and Premier League back in 2019 and 2020, we wouldn't be in the situation we find ourselves in now. My question for you, James, is what, if we're looking in the hindsight perspective, what should have changed? I mean, I don't need a name. You needed to sign this guy, because then we could just say we would sign like 12-year-old Jude Bellingham like 7 years ago. And that's just a brilliant signing. But what profile should have been signed? What player type should have been signed? What year that would have alleviated this issue?
Not signing a midfielder for 4.5 years is what creates this issue. Because what you're relying on is the legs of people that are putting in shift after shift after shift, expecting them to still do the same. It needed to be refreshed because we didn't bring anyone through. Curtis Jones has not come through yet. Harvey Elliott has not come through yet. Bajeg, whatever his name is, has not come through yet. When he comes through, I'll learn his name.
Yeah.
So what I think the best analogy that I've got at the moment for it is if Klopp is the heartbeat of this club, for too long, the brain has not been part of it. And if there's one signing I would make right now, I would get on the phone to Dynamo, where he's director of football, and say, because I believe that they've made up and solved it and it's all to do with the Arsenal approach, bury the differences, bring the brain back, and let us start to make some sensible decisions with a tactical genius working with the heartbeat of the club. That was what I'd do. But not signing a midfielder for 4.5 years, any midfielder within 4.5 years would be an improvement.
And that, again, harkens back to what I said. It was just one player at one point in the last 4.5 years that just could have transformed what we looked like right now. And if it was in 2019 or 2020, it would have been so easy because we could have just signed a guy who was a deeper option in the squad. Didn't have to come in, walk in day one and be the guy. He could have come in, learned the club, learned the system, and you sign him at 19, 20, 21 years old. And now if you had made that investment 3-4 years ago, even 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, you're Matheus Nunes or Manu Kone, you don't have this massive issue that you have right now. So I don't know. To end the stream, we'll ask this question, kind of a depressing one almost, because we are the LFC transfer room, so we have to do a certain amount of clickbaiting to hype up the transfer love and transfer expectations. Kev, does Liverpool sign somebody, a midfielder? I'll make it specific. Does Liverpool sign a midfielder in the January transfer window?
Horse says yeah. Head says no.
Which one's winning? Which one's winning? For you, the heart or the head?
Me heart will always win. It breaks me every year, and has done ever since FSG have been involved. And every time they say next year we'll go big, we're seeing with what's happened at the Red Sox last night. They're getting booed with John Henry. I think time's coming up for all parts of the sporting world for John Henry at the minute. I'd love us to sign a player. If we do, it'll be late on, I think.
Why late on? What do you think is going to change later in the transfer window that's going to force that? Is it going to be Klopp sees some bad performances when we play Brighton on the 14th? Is he going to be like, wow, this Moises Caicedo's guy is pretty good, and pulls like a Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz where he played against him and then signed him?
Well, it's 12 days to a Premier League game. We might as well write off the Wolves game in the FA Cup. Although I wouldn't be making changes. I'd be making that team that started yesterday to play that game. I wouldn't be playing the kids. I'd be using that as a chance. I'd use those 12 days, but I said this before the World Cup. We should be utilising that time to find a formation and a game. A game plan that allows us to bring the best out of Nunes and Salah in the same game rather than one than the other. I would like us to do that. I think it will take us to get to Brighton, that Brighton game, and depending on what happens in that game and how we play, maybe determine how quickly we go into that transfer window. At the minute, with us looking for a midfielder, I don't think we're going to find one before the Brighton game, and I can't see anyone willing to turn around and go, yeah, you can have him. Go ahead, you can take him off our hands. As we've said, as Anthony and James have quite rightly said on yourself, there is going to be a premium. Everyone knows we're out for a midfielder, so it makes sense that we'll hold out as long as we can, and I think we'll get something done, but it'll be late on in the window. Too late for me.
Too late for you, for Kev. So Anthony, Kev has someone, but a bit later on in the window. Anthony, for you, is a signing in the midfield made by Liverpool this window?
I believe so as well, but I believe it'll be late as well, but I don't think it's going to be.
And you're just agreeing with Kev, all strange. Like, you hear what Kev says, and you're like, I'm just going to agree with that.
Anthony's my boy.
Great minds think alike, I guess. But no, I think we'll sign someone, but I don't think it's going to be like a Caicedo or Manu Kone. I generally think it's going to be like another Arthur type signing guy, just some random guy, not necessarily on loan, but it could even be on loan. Because Klopp's even just said he said that we've not got sort of the budget to be funding a midfielder, so it's going to be on a cheap budget. But it just made me think, during this time, during the stream, at the beginning of the season we didn't necessarily have any money to sign a midfielder, but in January we've just magicked up like 40 million, but for Gakpo. But yeah, I think like someone like, I'm not saying we'll sign James Ward-Prowse, but someone of that sort of quality, I just reckon we'll sign him for 8 to 10 million or whatever, and hopefully that gets us over the line to top four. I'm always optimistic. I think Jack at the beginning of the season, I was like, we're going to do it invincible. We're going to win quadruple this season. It's going to be the one, but it is quite doubtful now. But at the same time, I'm still optimistic we could get top four.
Hey, look, after last year, it's tough to be anything but wildly optimistic that you get within 2 wins of a quadruple. You could at least put another 3 trophies on the table with that same group more or less coming back, a fresh replacement in Nunes. I just don't think we foresaw the legs really going in almost half the players. And I think also, James, you mentioned it, is mentally worn out, burnt out. I thought after the Fulham match at the beginning of the year, I think I may have said, like, this team is burnt out. Like, it looks like they've not recovered from the Champions League and Premier League defeats because they just did not recover. Did not recover from that. James, for you, midfielder this window, where does your heart, where does your head kind of lead you to with expectations?
I think, if I'm really honest, I reckon Firmino might go because there's genuine interest. I think we'll probably bring in a midfielder when Firmino goes because it'll be a 1 in 1 out. If someone else goes, someone else comes in. So I think we will be selling first, and once we've sold, then we will buy. But yeah, I definitely think we're going to bring someone in. And as hard as this season's, third top scorer in the Premier League, Jota, has not been available all year. There's so much positive to come back in the second half of the season. We're not halfway there yet, but we do. I think Liverpool fans need a midfielder signing just to get behind this team. Otherwise, it's just going to be toxic. And it's got to that level now where we need to sign someone to appease fans because otherwise it's just going to self-destruct.
Yeah, I mean, you see it after, anytime that, Henderson's brought up, Elliott's brought up after, transfers are disputed or kind of put down, they're under the microscope to really perform. Like Klopp, inadvertently, he doesn't intend to, obviously, but he puts them under the microscope. If you say, I don't want us to sign a midfielder, or we sign Gakpo over a midfielder, now people are going to look at Fabinho's performances and Elliott's in the midfield and Bajcetic having to play as an 18-year-old and say, are they up to the standard of Liverpool Football Club? It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. It's not
what do you want to say?
No, yeah.
No. Oh yeah, I want to buy 3 midfielders because midfield shit. He's not going to say that, is he?
No, he's not. And I think you make a good point with the departures. I think departures have to happen just in terms of a club statement perspective. Like, I think they're not going to, until there's a spot, like currently, Klopp says there's no opportunity, if an opportunity arises. If Liverpool sign a player, someone's getting unregistered from the squad. Like, is that Naby Keita? Is that Roberto Firmino? Those are the 2 guys that immediately, jump to mind with. You could bump them out. And even if they didn't leave, they're leaving the club in 6 months anyways with the contract situation. So if it's a Manu Kone, if it's a Moises Caicedo, and you're able to make that move, that I think it's tough. It's going to require them to bite the bullet. But Kev, you made the point that they pushed the issue off. They didn't get the new window plastic situation. I'm butchering your analogy, Kev.
No, basically, we've tried to do it on the cheap, haven't we? We've tried to fill the gap and put a band-aid over it and expecting the people that are there and stay loyal to the players that Klopp is loyal to. That's the other issue that we've got. It's all very well we haven't bought well in the last 4.5 years in that certain area, but we've been far too loyal with certain players. The certain players at the club that should not be there. We should be ruthless. The only manager that was ruthless during his time as Liverpool manager and should be a template was Bob Paisley, and look what he won. That's all I'll say. 6 league championships, 3 European Cups, 3 League Cups. It says it all. You get rid of, you lose Keegan, you bring Dalglish in. Be ruthless. Players reach a peak, and I'm not saying that should be a 30, but there's certain players that should have left. 2018, after 19 against Madrid, Origi should have left then. We could have got 20 mil for him. He's just scored the winning goal in the European Cup final. You make money on Origi, you get rid of him. Ox, after his big injury, you give him 6 months, you sell him in the summer if he's not getting back. These are the fundamental issues that we have at the club, that we're too kind and we're too much of a family-friendly club. I get that, and it's great, and it's boss, and it's great that we have these players around us, but they're not helping the team, and they're not helping us get to the level that we know this team can get to.
You make great points with those guys, what I think about is when I put myself back in 2019 Jack's mind, and I'm like, all right, we're selling Divock Origi. That's a hard sell to make because I love him. I want him to be around the club, but you got to be ruthless, as you mentioned, Kev, and that's been the issue. So I think the thing looking forward is, if we look at past mistakes of not being ruthless, Anthony, our boy Keita, I mean, I struggle to see if you're going to be ruthless, probably has to go. Ox probably
Absolutely.
has to go. Firmino probably has to go.
Everyone has to sell by date. We need to sell players, and that's the gamble you've got as the coach as to when to take that gamble and to call it a day on certain players. And it's hard to do, and not many managers get it right. And you'll make more mistakes than what you do making. But it can work, and it's been proven with certain managers that it works. We knew that you can't go through the whole of Klopp's life with just Milner, Hendo, Keita, Ox. You can't. It needs refreshing, and we haven't refreshed it. We've refreshed it in certain areas in other parts of the pitch, but the most in the engine room is where fundamentally you need to make those big changes. We've made changes, but we're still playing the same style of same game. Again, formation. We need to change formation if it needs to. At the end of the day, we could get at the end of this window, and we have to and we're left with what we've got. Then how do we fix that? Because you've got players Do we adopt and change our strategy and go from a 4-3-3 that we know that is loyal to Klopp? Do we have to go away from that and find another formation for the next 6 months that would allow us to get to the end of the season that doesn't take the legs out of our team? Because we need to look at something. We need to adapt something. And we need to look at the team that we currently got and the players we've got and utilise a system that is fundamental to the club and fundamental to this team moving forward. Because if we don't, we are going to leave ourselves in a position where we're going to be in more of a bad situation at the end of the season. We haven't got a plan B. We need to change the style of the game. Do we need to, if we want to play a high line, do we need to adopt a different formation altogether to utilise that? We haven't got the players to play in a 4-3-3 gegenpressing. We need a change. That's my own personal view. And I think we need to look at it that at the minute and focus on that. If we get someone in and allows us to play the way we are, great. But we need to go with the fact that with the realistic opportunity that no one comes in.
Yeah.
And we're left with what we've got. So
it's a great point. We have a lot of technical players, Elliot, Carvalho, the guys I always go back to, where they just don't. There's some of the newer guys that have been brought in. They just don't feel like they fit perfectly. It's been kind of some misses almost in the transfer committee side of things. Well, look, I mean, it's about 4 days to Liverpool play again. I'm sure our minds will change 85 times in between now and then on how good they are. And on Friday night, when I'm looking ahead to the game, like, the Brentford match wasn't that bad. We actually kind of were a bit unlucky in some departments. We didn't get 2 own goals again. Like, we should have gotten 2 own goals like we did in the Leicester match. But so that match this Saturday is going to be an interesting one. And then Brighton. So again, it is a 11-day wait until Liverpool play again in the Premier League. So some time either to reassess on the training ground, maybe look in the boardroom, any signings that want to be made. It could be a Gakpo situation, a Jota situation where there's no rumors. And then we're signing Sergej Milinkovic-Savic tomorrow. That's just the name that jumps into my head, where it's like, that'd just be one that we have not even been linked to in the slightest. But if he got signed, I'd be like, all right, that's pretty cool. That's a cool signing. So make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. You follow the LFC Transfer Room on all social platforms, so you're the most up to date with the Liverpool transfer news. Because when it happens very quickly. So we will be hopefully keeping up with the club as things go. But we'll wrap up our Transfer Central stream here today. Really appreciate the time of James, Anthony, and Kev. And for everyone who tuned in, getting involved, really appreciate it as always. But I've been Jack for the LFC Transfer Room. We'll catch you in our next video or stream. Take care.